So that short little clip that you've just watched was a lot of fun to film and a lot of fun to edit. But if you've never filmed a day to night transition before, the whole process can seem a little bit daunting. Today, we're going to look at the three main components that you need to learn to be able to create your own. Number one, Waypoint Planner. We're going to need a repeatable route here, filmed once in the day, once at night, and then we're going to splice them together. After we have got that planned, we're going to get on location and look at the second point, and that is camera settings. Because we're filming in low light, we're going to need to get the absolute maximum out of our drone's camera. Once we've got all the filming done, we're going to head back here and look at the third section, which a lot of people do find complicated and might need a bit of help with. That is the editing part. Now, don't worry, we're going to be using free software to do this, and I will walk you through from start to finish exactly how we are going to edit. All we need to do now, dive into the Waypoint Planner and get that route planned. But it is worth mentioning here, if you have watched my Waypoint tutorial, which I will link in the description, you could potentially skip this section because I do look at waypoint planning in a lot more detail in that particular video. If you haven't seen it at all, you won't get all of the functionality taught to you today of the Waypoint Planner, but you'll get enough to be able to do an A to B route specifically for this transition. Without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, right, this is a very quick tutorial on how to use the Waypoint Planner, which we are going to need for a nice repeatable flight so that we can film the Spinnaker Tower in daytime and then in nighttime, and then in post we can splice those videos together to make a nice transition from daytime to nighttime. Waypoint Planner is brilliant for that because we can take out human error. Now, in Waypoint Planner, if you've never used it before, it can seem a little bit daunting at first, but as soon as you start using it, you realize how simple it really is. So I'm doing this without being connected to the drone. I'm doing this ahead of time so I can have everything planned for when I get there. All you need to do is go into your connection guide and then click on the camera view icon in the top right, and it brings you into your RC not connected little screen here. What I do have access to, over on the left hand side of the screen, you can see the squiggly icon with the dots in it. Click on that, that's our Waypoint Planner. I can then click on the little map in the bottom left and it brings up our map. This is lovely, but it doesn't give us much detail. I can still zoom in on the area. There's Spinnaker Tower and Gunwharf Quays. But let us have a quick look at the icons on the right hand side. Bottom one, layers. Let's hit mixed. Bam, we can see a heck of a lot more detail now. That is great. So, flying visit through the Waypoint tutorial route here. All we need to do is tap the screen. We get into our waypoint section, tap the screen, and it lays down a waypoint for us. We are going to fly away from the tower, backwards, over to our launch site, which is going to be somewhere over here near Old Portsmouth. And we're going to tap the screen again. Bam, there we go, our second waypoint. Notice how the little arrows coming off of these waypoints are pointing in the direction that the drone is going to be flying. We want it to look at Spinnaker Tower. Really easy way to get it to do that. I can assign these waypoints to specific points of interest. So let's tick on POI, and just like we drop a waypoint, I can drop a point of interest. Now I'm going to be a bit sneaky here, and I'm going to drop two. I'm going to grab and hold those and put them over the top of each other, but I want to set them at different heights. So waypoint 1 is going to look at point of interest 1, which is going to be low, and then we're going to pan all the way back to waypoint 2, and it is going to raise up the drone, and while raising up the drone, we're going to make the drone look up higher up the tower. So to do that, we're on point of interest 1 here in our box, and altitude of the point of interest we're going to set nice and low. Let's scroll that down to say 15 meters, shall we? And then I'm going to link that to waypoint 1. That's nice and simple. Now you can see waypoint 1 has jumped its direction of aim, pointing straight at point of interest 1. Let's scan over to point of interest 2. Same thing, just higher up. We're going to move that up so it's looking, let's go, it's looking 70 odd. 70, there we go, 70 meters up the tower. Now I want to link that to waypoint 2. So that will now be pointing at the tower, except it'll be pointing a little higher up the tower, which obviously we don't get from this perspective. That's brilliant. So what we've got there is 2 points of interest, looking at the tower, but moving backwards and changing the height that they are looking. What we haven't done, if we go back to our waypoints, if I click on waypoint 1, the altitude of the drone is at 50 meters. I am going to drop that very slightly. I would like it to start a bit lower, let's say 40 meters. But I'm going to have visual on this drone, so if there are any vessels with tall masts moving in and around the area, I will be able to cancel this manually and fly out of danger. But let's pop to waypoint 2. I want the camera to rise up as it goes backwards. So we're going to set the altitude of waypoint 2 at 100 meters. 101, I like 101, let's go with that. So we're going to start at 40 and then move to 101 meters. And we're also going to lift our gimbal slightly up the spinnaker tower as it makes this transition. The next thing that I want to change is the speed. Speed is set to global speed. Now I want to keep the same speed all the way through this flight. But if I click on that, I can adjust the global speed in the settings. You can see that I'm on 9 kilometers an hour, which means this 283 meter flight, which is not far at all, is going to take us 1 minute 53. So I'm going to speed us up significantly here. I'm going to go to nearer 20, I think. 20 is good. 20 kilometers an hour. Just shy. So there we go. Now, all of a sudden, that is a 51 second flight, which is far more reasonable. Now, exit out of there. And I have got waypoint 1, looking at point of interest 1. Camera pans back. Camera lifts up. Camera travels at the same speed and always looks at the spinnaker tower. I haven't yet told the camera to do anything. Now I can set my settings when I get on site relevant to the particular lighting that I've got, but I can scroll across camera action here to start record on waypoint 1, skip to waypoint 2, and I can tell it to stop recording. Because if I don't put that in automatically, there is a good chance that I'll hit start on this route and then completely forget to press record, which would be irritating. Right, that is as simple as it is, setting a nice little A to B route on the waypoint planner here. All I need to do now is save this. So I can go into my little folder icon here, and all I need to do is click on the little pen next to this file, delete that, and I'm going to call this GWQ Gunwharf Quays waypoints. Let's do that. Gunwharf Quays waypoints. That is absolutely fab. Now all I need to do is click on done and save. Click on save there. Bam, Gunwharf Quays waypoints saved. All I need to do when I get on site is connect everything up, the drone and the controller, load this up, click on next, and then this little go box will be green once everything's connected. I can hit go. Wherever I don't even need to launch it, will launch itself, and then it will fly to waypoint 1 at 40 meters, and then it will start recording and it will fly my route for me. I can repeat that twice. I can do it once in the day, once at night, and then identical footage is ready for me to mess around with in post. Simples. Okay, that is the waypoint planned. Now all we need to do, grab the drone, jump in the car, get on location, and look at the camera settings ready so we can fly that route. Okay, so what I want you to remember here is that these settings are the settings that are working for me in my lighting condition when filming this. Your lighting will be different, these exact settings won't match, but what I will do is talk you through the settings so you know what to select to maximize your quality. First of all, we are going to be shooting in pro. We do not want to be shooting in auto because auto is going to make lots of decisions for us and a lot of them will be wrong. In pro, we want to take anything that is selectable as auto, for example the white balance, out of auto. We want that to be manual. So if you have got that set to auto, As your camera pans across the scene, the drone is going to be making its own call on what the average color temperature of that particular shot at any given time is. And we will have a variation in our color temperature. We want to shut that down basically. We will set that color temperature to what suits our eyes, what we feel is comfortable, and leave it in manual. Obviously, we're going to be filming in 4K to maximize our quality. And because we're not doing any action, this is nice and slow footage. We are good with 30 frames per second. We can even drop to 25 frames per second if we want. It's quite good for low light because you can push exposure times further. But I'm happy with 30. We're going to stick there for this. Color, normal or D-Log M? Always D-Log M. Normal drone is going to try and impart its own color grading onto your video. We don't want the drone to do that. We want maximum abilities to color grade in post-processing afterwards. So we shoot in D-Log M for that reason. Once we have finished playing around in that section, we can look specifically at shutter and the ISO. ISO, the rule is try and leave it as low as possible. This is how you reduce grain in your image, basically. If you've got a really high ISO, if you're pushing 3200, you are going to see more grain in your image. We'll keep that as low as possible. But one thing that we would like to try and keep the same is the 1/60th. Now, the hard and fast rule for shutter exposure time is generally 1 over double your frame rate, and as we're shooting at 30 frames per second, we want to set that to 1 over 60th of a second. That is going to give us the smoothest, most cinematic vibe from our footage. Now, as it gets darker, we can't necessarily always follow that rule. We can punch our ISO up and up and up to try and keep it at 1/60th, but we will reach a point where we're pushing it up so high to get the right exposure that we're introducing too much grain, and at that point you want to start changing your shutter speed, increasing the shutter speed, so you go to 1/50th, 1/40th, 1/30th, so that you can keep enough light in your image. That being said, you look at your exposure compensation at the bottom at minus 0.7. That means it's slightly underexposed. I'm happy with that. I don't ever want it to show overexposed, because if you overexpose part of your image, you will lose all detail. Any information when something whites out is lost and can't be recovered in post. If it's a little bit dark, it might not be particularly pleasing to the eye at first, but the information is still there and you can quite often drag that back in post-processing. So having a slight minus figure for your exposure compensation is always good. Okay, here we are going into Waypoint Planner and loading up the route. You can see the drone's already in the air. You can do it once it's started. I have a quick double check of the settings, and over on the right hand side here you can see next, and it gives me the green box for go. I click that and the drone starts flying in the general direction of the start point, and it will complete the route for us. Okay, filming done. Now we're back at the computer. Let's load our footage up onto that and open up a bit of software that you need to download if you don't already have it, called DaVinci Resolve. Now, it's completely free, at least the non-studio version is, but you don't need the studio version to be able to do the splicing that we're going to do with these two shots, the daytime and the nighttime. So let's get it fired up and see how it's done. Okay, we've managed to capture our two videos, daytime and nighttime, of Spinnaker Tower. Now we're going to try and use DaVinci Resolve to get them to overlay nicely so we can make this transition. So job number one is to drop our two clips into the media pool, and then over on the edit page down here we're going to drag both of those clips onto the timeline. Brilliant. Okay, so let me pull the sound. We haven't got any sound here, so we're going to get that out of the way. Now I've got this full timeline to work with. As I drag my play bar across here, you can see it goes through daytime and then it goes through nighttime scene as well. we need to try and get both of these clips perfectly aligned. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to stick both clips on top of each other, move them away from the start so that I can make more adjustments. And then you will notice as I drag this bar across, you can only see the top one. That's because the higher up on your video layering that you go, anything nearer the top is on top as far as the video playback is concerned. That makes a lot of sense. We want to be able to see both of these at the same time. So on the right hand side, when I've selected this top video, we can drag the opacity down so that I can see a bit of both of those clips. That now demonstrates how out of alignment these two clips are. What we need to take into account here is we have just flown to waypoint routes, but GPS isn't 100% accurate. There are going to be different wind conditions from one filming session to the next, so the drone will be working differently, working a bit harder against wind or with wind, so we are going to have to make adjustments. To do so, I am going to fast forward through a lot of the adjustments because it is time consuming, but I will talk you through what I want to do. We have several things we can adjust. Number one is, let's put this to wherever I want the transition to be, probably just over halfway. Number one is the timing of the clips. If I move one clip relative to the other through the scene, faster or slower than the other one, we can put them at different timings, different intervals. That is great. Let's snap them back together though and look at some of the other things we can do. Over in transform, we can zoom in and out with one of the clips. I'll reset them after each go. We can move them on the x-axis, so I can move them left to try and line them up, and that's looking better already for the Spinnaker Tower. We can use them on the y-axis to line them up, also looking better already on the tower. That is great. We also have some more detailed tools. One of the things that we can do is we can adjust the pitch, which I do have to do on a regular basis when I'm doing this. Sometimes you will be looking up or down, so I'll have to try and pull them into alignment like that. And the other thing that we can do is mess with the yaw, which effectively rotates it around the center. Okay, it's fast forward time. You don't want to watch me tweak all of those settings that we've just discussed, but basically play with them. My main bit of advice though would be don't sweat the small stuff. Focus on the Spinnaker Tower or your main point of interest or any bits of structure that your eye will naturally be drawn to. Stuff on the outside edge is less likely to be noticed. Make sure the major components are all lined up. Okay, that looks pretty good. But we're not done yet. That's as close as I'm going to get really with this alignment. And you see as I change the opacity, we transition from day to night. Largely we're in there, but we're not perfectly aligned. Got some lamp posts towards the edge of the frame that are not working, but generally that's not bad. For a quick demonstration, now let's get that opacity back up. I should have left that there. You notice that we've got this bit of frame where I've had to move everything to try and get it to fit. Now that we'll see if we can sneak back in, chop that off. So we can do that quite easily by selecting both clips, and I'm going to move them. Oops, I'm going to move them right, so all of my dodgy edges can be right in the middle. Maybe we go a little more, and then up and down y-axis, get that middled. Now that's middled, we just need to zoom until that's gone, which is as simple as that. Okay, so let's zoom out a bit here now, and I'll show you the next thing we need to do. This was where we were going for our transition, so I am going to Control B and split both of those. Now I want daytime at the beginning, so I'm going to overlap that and just wipe it. And we want nighttime at the end, so I'm going to overlap that, wipe it. And let's move that down to the bottom. Now that can shift all the way to the back. Let's get this over here. And let's have a little transition. To create a transition, you want to right click on the gap between the two videos, and I'm using a cross dissolve, but you can use many more different types of fade, but the cross dissolve works well for this kind of gentle transition. I'm going to add a 60 frame cross dissolve. Now if I play that, let's get up here and hit play, you will see how short that transition actually is. It's relatively quick. I would like to go a little bit further with that, so I'm going to zoom in on that transition, grab one end of it and increase it slightly. Now you do run the risk of having more alignment issues, but we're not going to worry about those. We're going to go for a nice smooth transition between the two. So if I chop these a little bit shorter, let's drag that end in so it ends with the light in shot. Let's drag this end in significantly. One thing I am going to do that I haven't done yet is I'm going to play around with the final look of these two images. Now I could come into here and then just whack my standard LUT onto each of these clips, but look at how unnatural it looks. So I'm not going to use my LUTs on these night shots. I'm going to tweak, I want the brightness to come up. I'm going to tweak a few of these individual sliders myself, and I'm going to start with lifting those shadows, not too much because you don't want a load of grain to come in, but I definitely want to lift the highlights in that to give it more pop. That's looking a lot better than it was before. Let's switch to the other one, and this one definitely needs a shadow lift because it's too dark. I had an ND8 filter on as it was starting to get dusky, which was unnecessary. And we will add some highlights, bring the light up in the brighter parts of the picture as well. Okay, that is those two clips with a cross dissolve to frame them together. And there you have it. That is everything that you need to know to be able to film your own day to night transition, all the way from planning a waypoint, getting on site, getting your camera settings dialed in, and then coming back and editing it on a computer. Hopefully you've got at least one positive takeaway from today's video, and if you have, I would love it if you drop me a like and a subscribe. It really does help a small YouTube channel. It helps the algorithm know who wants to watch these kind of videos. If you want to learn a little bit more about waypoints, then I do have another video which is going to be linked in the description, which goes into a lot more detail about the full functionality that the Waypoint Planner actually has. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching Sky Scout UK. I'll see you in the next episode. Fly safe.